This is the Seiko Astron SBXC121, as it's known in Japan, or the SSH121 as it's known overseas. So this is my personal watch. I've had it for about 6 months, and I've seen other reviews online of Astrons, but they often are from either people who are selling them or people who are just like reviewing them in the context of like watch review channels or something like that, which they might only have had it for a week or so. So I thought I'd just put this out here. There's my impressions and my review of this particular watch, which has been my personal watch. So I thought I'd just let you know how it works, what I think about it, and I hope it helps anybody who's thinking about buying one of these. So yes, as I mentioned, this is the SBXC121 or SSH121. I'll do the stats first. The case size is 43.1 millimeters. I think that's the size of the basically the bezel minus the crown or the pushers. The thickness is 12.2 millimeters, and the lug-to-lug measures about 48 millimeters. And you can tell it's a integrated bracelet design. So these you can change the bracelet if you want, but I think it has a sort of special strap size, which would probably necessitate a strap that was, designed to fit watches like this. So it's not a huge watch. It's not slim either. It's not small, but if you compare it to something like a dive watch, for example, the Omega Seamaster Diver 300 millimeters is something like 42 millimeter case size with 13.6 millimeters thickness. Rolex Submariner, I think depending on the model, is roughly 13 millimeter thick as well. So while it's not super slim, it's not terribly thick either, I don't think. And it's got a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating, and it's really effective. Like head on, it's often the crystal just disappears. Even off angle, you can make it catch reflections, but I don't know, it's not too bad. It's still very legible, so the crystal's great. It's very, very clear. And the watch is constructed out of titanium. This specific model has black titanium, and it's coated with what Seiko calls super hard coating. And I haven't put any scratches in it yet, but I don't know quite well how well it lives up to the name. Yes, and because it's this black treated titanium, it's not very reflective. The case itself isn't terribly shiny, but it is, because it's titanium, it's also quite light. It measures 105 grams stock, and mine's a little lighter because I've taken out a couple of links to fit my wrist. And it's solar quartz, so that means you can see, the 1 hertz quartz tick rate, and it's solar powered. Seiko says the power reserve is 6 months or 2 years if it's in the dark. Apparently after several days it will turn off the hands. It'll maybe move them to 12 or just stop them if it hasn't detected it's been in the light for I think 3 days or something like that. So on a full charge, you can be fairly confident that the watch is going to retain its charge. The power reserve indicator for the solar cell is on the left subdial here, the 9 o'clock one. There's 4 pips, and you can see because it's pointing at 9 o'clock, it's pointing left. That means it's at effectively full charge, and all of the functionality of the watch is available to be used. And this is part of a series of Astrons called the Nexter series. It debuted roughly 10 years after the first revival of the Astron nameplate. The Nexter series is probably most easily distinguished by the hour hand. It's on previous Astron series, it was this larger arrow shape, but now it's, I guess, what you call a sword shape, similar to the minute hand. And they also, for the Nexter series, they sort of redesigned the cases. They're slimmer than they used to be. The lug-to-lug is a lot smaller. They're a little thinner. And the lugs have this sort of pointed appearance. So if you see older Astrons with a larger hour hand, then that wasn't the Nexter series yet. And the movement is what's called the 5x53 or 5x53 movement. And the most significant thing about this part of the Astrons and the high-end Astrons is that they're GPS. This is a GPS watch, so that is probably the most important thing about this watch. So next I'll get into the functionality. The big party trick with this watch, raison d'etre, is the fact that it can do a full GPS sync. So it can find your location and then set the correct time based on where you are in the world. So you don't have to tell it where you are, you don't have to set a time zone, it will just automatically detect that and set itself. So I'll do an example of this now. In this example, I set the watch, I think, to Delhi time, because it's at a 30-minute offset to my current time zone, Japan time. So you can see in this example, I've chosen a wide open area. So in order to do the full GPS sync, you have to be in an area where you can contact or receive reception from 4 different satellites at the same time. That's what it requires to be able to do a full location sync for where you are. So I'm in this wide open area, no buildings, no trees. I don't think you necessarily have to be in an area this wide open, but it certainly helps, as we'll see. So we initiate the sync by holding down the pusher at 4 o'clock for 3 seconds. So you hold that down, and the second hand moves to 6 o'clock to indicate that it's doing that. And we can see the 9 o'clock subtile is indicating 4+, which means that it's trying to find at least 4 satellites. So we hold it down, and then one important thing to note here is that it's going to indicate how many satellites it's able to get reception from by using the indicators on the hour indicators, or at every 5 seconds. So if the second hand is pointing to 1, that means it's getting reception from 1 satellite, 2 from 2 satellites, 3 from 3 satellites, and so on. So of course we want to hit at least 4. If we have more, then great. So we can see right away in this example, I've hit 5 right off the bat. So it's indicating 5, then 6, then 5 again, then 6. So in this case, yeah, we're doing good. 7. So we're going to be able to get that reception and find our location pretty easily. So then it hits 9. I don't know if that means that it's listening or if it actually did receive 9, or if it's possible to get reception from 9 satellites at the same time. I'm not entirely sure. But once it's getting those, it's listening in. It's apparently it has some sort of map of the Earth which says, okay, if you're here, you're here. Then it moves the hands to the correct spot. You can see that the hour hand and the minute hand move independently. So if we press the pusher at 2 o'clock again, the 4 o'clock pusher, that goes to TYO, indicating that yes, you're in the TYO time zone. That's what we detected. And then the 2 o'clock pusher, if we press that, the second hand will go to the 8 seconds Y. That means yes, it received a it successfully received its location. And that's it. So that's why Seiko markets this watch kind of as a traveler's watch. The idea that you can just get off the plane somewhere, hold down the button, and then within, as we saw, maybe 30 seconds or so, if you're lucky, you have the correct time, sync to your time zone. And apparently these 5X watches also take into account daylight savings time. Apparently some other Astrons, the 3X series, might not, or you might have to adjust it to daylight saving times manually. But yeah, that is the big party trick for this watch. And the other important piece of functionality, which I actually think is the killer feature more than the full location sync, is that if you hold down the 2 o'clock pusher, it will do a really quick sync. So it only needs to find 1 satellite in that case, and it will pull down the correct time from that satellite. It won't analyze your time zone. It's going to assume you're in the same time zone, but it will pull down the correct time from the GPS satellite signal. And I really think that's super handy, because that means this watch is just always on time. Like, you never have to correct it. You don't have to pull out the crown and find a more accurate source of time and set it any time. It's just always on time. So similar to the full GPS sync, that requires having some part of a view of the sky. I have been able to do that indoors sometimes. It's been a little hit or miss. It just depends on the watch being able to get reception from 1 GPS satellite. And if it can, then great. You have the correct time right then and there. It will try to do that 24 hours after its most recent sync. And it will also try and do that if you are outdoors, if the watch face detects enough light where it thinks it's outdoors. And it'll automatically try to listen in and receive reception from a GPS satellite. So the really nice thing about this watch is, without almost any effort at all, I mean, if you're outdoors enough, you might never have to initiate a sync. It'll just be on time all the time. And that's incredibly valuable in a watch. I've had a mechanical watch where, as the movement got further away from service, or I think the watch I had was probably not regulated very well, but having to constantly resync that was a bit of a pain. And even a fairly accurate quartz watch, you're going to have to set every now and again if you really want to be on time. But the Astron is just always on time, and correct time is just never more than about 10-15 seconds away. So I really, really think that's extremely useful. So next, let's go into the styling of the watch. So as you can see, it's a fairly unique color here. I'm not capturing it very well on this camera. I'm just doing my phone. And it's a sort of, I don't know if it's blue or indigo or purple. It looks very different from the list image on Seiko's website. It's a sort of, it's I don't know how to describe it, but it's a sort of kind of saturated blue or something like that. Combined with the black titanium, this isn't especially flashy or like people aren't going to notice this watch from across the room. But it's just it's a sort of interesting, subtle color that I really didn't kind of it didn't look anything like I thought it would when I looked at the list images. I thought it was going to be this very solid blue watch, and the bezel is a bit more blue, but it's a sort of very interesting, unique kind of, maybe it's indigo, I don't know. It took me a little while to get used to, but I do like it. It's very unique. I haven't seen a lot of other watches with a similar color. And another cool thing is that not all Astrons are like this, but this one has this nice sun kind of sunburst pattern on the face. My current lighting doesn't display it very well. In different lighting patterns, it's more or less visible. But I really like sunburst patterns. I think they look kind of cool, and they sort of emphasize a face very well. And it does look quite nice. It's a little subtle. You won't notice it in all lighting conditions, but when you do, it's very nice. And different models of the Astron have different things, but this on the bezel of this one, the time zones are marked with time zone names. I think these are airport codes, although I'm not entirely sure. Other models of the Astrons use UTC offsets, like UTC +0 for London. Japan TYO is UTC +9, I believe. I personally prefer having the time zone names because if I'm choosing a time zone, I don't really know what the UTC offset is most of the time, but it depends on what you like, I suppose. And then, with the integrated lugs, I think it looks, the integrated bracelet, I think looks quite nice. And yes, one thing I forgot to mention about a bracelet, it does have micro adjust, so you can hold down the clasp and adjust it to 3 different levels. And mine is a little stiff, actually. I find it a bit hard to adjust, but unlike, this is something that people are asking Grand Seiko to do very often. They want the micro adjust, and the Astron does have that. So as for my likes for this watch, first of all, I really like just the feel of it. The titanium is nice. I have other titanium watches like this Tessa, which I reviewed recently, which, it's also titanium. Oh, sorry, I shook my camera. It's also titanium. It just doesn't feel as nice as the Seiko. I don't know how Seiko have made this or treated it, but it just feels great. It feels premium. Something about how the titanium's constructed. I don't know if it's the black titanium or what, but it just feels nice on your wrist. You can run your finger over it. I think this bezel is apparently it's ceramic, I guess, to help with reception, and it's also maybe under some kind of crystal as well. So it's just, it just feels premium. It's very nice on your wrist. The pushers also, I really like the pushers. They have this nice solid click to them. You can push them easily, and I'm pushing the 2 o'clock to check the result of the last time sync, which was successful. And the pushers just feel great. So if I push the bottom pusher, that tells me I'm in TYO, Tokyo time zone. And the second hand only moves around in clockwise. It doesn't move counterclockwise. But there's this nice satisfying click to them. Again, on the Tessa, which I just showed, the clicks are okay, but this it feels, clearly this isn't a mechanical watch, but there's a nice mechanical click when you push it in, which is always fun. You're always trying to find an excuse to check the time when you want to, or check the sync status when you want to. As far as other likes go, the indices on this are really nice. They're very shiny. This watch is produced at the same facility as here in Nagano as the quartz and spring drive Grand Seikos, and I don't know if they're finished to the same level. I haven't had a lot of experience with Grand Seikos, to be sure, but the indices are very shiny. They catch light, especially if you're in a grocery store or a jewelry store, whatever the lighting they have. I don't know if that's fluorescent lighting or LED or what, but different lighting conditions make them glint and kind of glitter, and they, if I'm at a grocery store, I'll just look at the watch just to gawk at it. So it's kind of a fun thing. I think it's part of the finishing that you pay for on this watch. And also, I like the band a lot. I know there are people who are down on Seiko bands, but I like it a lot. It's nice and thick. It feels good alongside the rest of the watch, and it's solid. I kind of, having gone through a lot of watches in the last year or so, I like the thickness of this band. It feels good, feels solid, if that makes sense. Not heavy, but solid. And as far as my dislikes of the watch go, I think one of the things, if you look at the 9 o'clock subdial, there's this leap second indicator right here. And I think if you press, what is it, the 2 o'clock pusher twice, it will tell you not whether the leap second information was received. I think, okay, yes. So that means, I guess, during the last sync, it sort of received some kind of leap second information. And I personally feel like, I mean, I could go my whole life without learning what a leap second is. I really don't care about it. And I kind of wish they could have, taken that off. I don't really need to see the word leap second every time I look at the face of the watch, as nitpicky as that criticism may be. And another thing on my watch, as I hinted earlier, this clasp is a little stiff. I don't know if it's only mine. Maybe it's just there's some sort of manufacturing error. Maybe they're all like this. But I have times taking it off sometimes. I have trouble taking it off sometimes. It tends to stick a little bit. And the micro adjust is a little hard to make because you really have to push it in solid. I don't know if it's not just needs a little time to age, if there's some sort of manufacturing error. It's not enough to make me take it back, but yeah, I do find that the clasp is not as quick release as I would like it to be. And this is another complaint I've heard about other Astrons. I can't tell if the minute hand is slightly off, if it's slightly behind where it should be, like, or maybe the indicators on the track are a little off. Like I have had times when, if you see the second hand, it's at 0 seconds, where it feels like the minute hand isn't exactly on the indicator. I can't tell if it's just, if it's just a perception issue. One thing is that the dial is fairly deep and the minute hand is elevated fairly high above the dial, so maybe it's just a perception angle thing. I noticed it a lot when I first got the watch. I don't quite know if I'm just being picky about it or if it really is like that. I'm not entirely sure. So I've heard other people with the same complaints. I don't know if it's within spec, if it's something that gets better, or if it's a QA issue. I don't know. If it's the kind of thing that might bug you, maybe you might want to see one of these in person to inspect which one you're going to buy before you buy it. Because, if it is actually behind, we're looking at 30 minutes past the hour here, and it doesn't seem like it's exactly over the middle of the indicator, but maybe it is, and I'm just imagining things. I don't know, but that is actually probably my biggest complaint about the watch is if the minute hand is off alignment, then I wish it wasn't. So what are the alternatives to this watch? There are quite a few. Citizen makes a series of watches in their Atessa range called the CC4000 watches. They're very similar. They are sold at roughly the same price. They have chronographs built into them, and I think maybe alarms as well. But the disadvantage of the Atessas is that they're a little thicker. I think they start at about 15 millimeters thick for the full functionality ones. And they're also a little larger. I think the case size is larger and they're a little thicker. And of course, I personally like the styling on the Astron a lot more, but it depends on personal preference, I suppose. And then probably the other competing watch I would say, if you're looking at watches like this, is Casio's Oceanus series. Not all of them, but some of them are similar to this, subdials with chronographs, day date indicators, things like that, alternate time zones. And but none of the current Oceanus models have GPS as far as I'm aware. But what they do have is Bluetooth sync. So you can, sync the watch, get correct time several times per day without intervention, but not through GPS. And then there are also other Astrons that Seiko just announced. I think that as part of the 5X series, a refinement of them with chronographs. So as I make this video, they aren't currently for sale. I think they're going to come out maybe in a couple of months. But I guess if you're shopping for one in the future, you might want to bear that in mind, that you can probably get something similar with a chronograph and, slightly different styling to fit the chronograph dials. I believe the subdials are, I believe the 12 o'clock is subdial. I think that's like the 20th of the second indicator is moved to 12 o'clock. The Astron logo is moved over here to 3 o'clock. And the bezel becomes it says chronograph at the top. And I don't have the picture in front of me, but I believe it's not a tachymeter. I think it's just a 0 to 60 indicator around the bezel. So I personally prefer the styling of this, but it might be a question of which one you prefer the styling for, whether you want to get a chronograph on an Astron or not. And there's one more piece of functionality I forgot to mention, actually. So there's a second time subdial on the 6 o'clock. So if I pull out the dial 2 clicks, you can see I'm choosing the time zone for the subdial down there. So I have it on LAX, Pacific time in the US, because I have family over there. but I can change that really easily. You can see that the second subdial only the minute hand isn't independent, but it spins super fast. So there we are, Anchorage. So we have, let's see, that's Honolulu. We have another time zone between Anchorage and Honolulu. It's maybe at a 30-minute offset. I don't know what time zone that is actually. But yeah, you can just set this secondary subdial down here to whatever time you want. So that was a big reason why I got this watch. I wanted to be able to track Pacific time as well as my current time zone. And you can see I can choose between standard time and daylight savings time. I think by pressing this bottom pusher. Is it the top pusher? Yes, okay. So the secondary time zone won't receive daylight saving times information automatically. You're going to have to set that and unset it when if that time zone uses it when daylight saving kicks over. But yeah, it's very easy to use. So you can keep track of a second time down there as well as your current time. And you can also reverse the current time and the secondary time by holding down both pushers for a few seconds. So you can see again the hour hand and minute hand are independent. And the secondary subdial, they're not independent, but it spins so fast it's not a big deal. And okay, it's spinning the subdial to indicate that the date is changing. So yeah, you can keep track of a second time zone very easily with the Astron. And I'll just swap them back just for fun. And around the hour hand goes, spins away, and you can see the dial indicating that the date window is going to switch as well. So that's good fun. So I think, yeah, because of all of this, I think the Astron is marketed as a traveler's watch for people who are traveling around a lot, switching time zones. So that brings me to the last part here. Who is this watch for, and does it make sense for you? So I think I wanted to say that this is not the only watch to get it. This is not the only watch that corrects itself. As the competitors I've mentioned, you got the Atessa, the Oceanus, and of course any smartwatch that's using your phone or some other indicator of time is going to be able to do this as well. So I'm not going to do Seiko's marketing for them and tell you this is like the only way to get a watch like this, because it isn't. But it is GPS, so GPS is nice because it's always there. It doesn't require syncing with any secondary source. I mean, the Earth is just being bombarded with GPS signals no matter what all the time. So, you can always use that for timekeeping with a watch like this. And I think it's certainly worth something. It's not the only way to get this time, but it's nice. And I think, this watch isn't cheap. It's over $2,000 US, and I think it justifies its price by the GPS functionality, which doesn't come cheap. Is not in any sort of traditional watch like this under $1,500 or so, I would think. And I think what you're really paying for this is the finishing, though. Like it's finished. I don't have a Grand Seiko to compare it to, but it doesn't lack for anything in the finishing, I feel. It's not a classically elegant watch the way a lot of Grand Seikos are, but, it's just the case is wonderful. It feels very nice. The indices just kind of shine and glitter. The hands look nice. The loom's quite good as well, very clear. It doesn't take a whole lot to charge in. It stays a fair deal. It's not like a dive watch, but it's a fairly persistent loom. So I think this watch is not going to completely upend the watch world like the original series of Astrons did in the 60s and 70s. But I do think that solar and GPS are good kind of successor technologies or inheritor technologies of the Astron name. I think what this represents is a watch that really fights to keep itself as accurate as possible, even if you change time zones. And it feels special to me. I mean, I don't know what other watches you might have. I don't know if this is going to be the nicest one in your collection or the lowest end one, but it feels special to me. I just enjoy it a lot. It's actually grown on me. When I first bought it, I kind of felt guilty for spending this much on a watch and wondering if it was really worth it. But it feels nice. It feels special. It's well finished. The functionality is wonderful, and I think it should have a lot of longevity. So I hope that's helped anybody who's looking at one of these watches. So thanks, and see you next time.